and legs and a newly forming little face that had been traumatized and killed by a first trimester abortion. And this is when most abortions happen on children, 9 to maybe 8 to 11 weeks old. And I was just cut to the heart looking at this image, and I thought, is this real? Is this really happening? And how can we be allowing this? And then as I got older and into my teen years, I began to discover more about abortion in America, how it's been legal for the last 40 years, how we've called this a so-called constitutional right, how we have over 3,000 abortions in our country every day legally. And I became more and more convicted that this is a human rights abuse, and this is the leading human rights issue of our day. If we don't protect our weakest children, our weakest citizens, our weakest Americans, how can we expect to have peace in our country and to be a nation truly founded on justice and on human rights? So we need to reevaluate what we've allowed our country to come to, and we need to overcome this great human rights abuse that's happening in our midst.
Lila, you and your group have become very well known nationally over the last several years as kind of going undercover and going in and with hidden cameras and pieces of clothing or a handbag or something and catching people at abortion clinics kind of giving advice against what many times the law would say. And so how did you come up with this idea? And many people would say, wow, that's daring to do this kind of thing. How did this idea come about? And it's got to be somewhat stimulating for you and your group when you come up with these ideas of here's how we're going to do it, the planning and all of that sort of thing to go into these clinics.
Well, I think, first of all, investigative journalism has been done in our country and internationally for years. So Live Action certainly didn't invent the undercover method or anything like that. We employed the best and most strategic and the most powerful methods to expose the abuses of the abortion industry. Because the reality is we're living in the midst of so-called clinics that are set up in our own communities near to our own places of worship, our own homes, which are killing children all the way up through 9 months and sometimes committing infanticide of those children. And we've hidden it behind sterile clinic doors and, big complexes and buildings. So it's hard for us to understand the killing, the destruction of innocent life that's going on around us. So our undercover methodology is really to expose, the many illegal, illicit activities and the different, abuses against not just the child but against women that happen in the abortion industry every day. And this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Planned Parenthood alone, the industry leader, is a billion-dollar organization. They receive over half of their $1 billion from the government. So there's a whole world of unregulated abortion centers in our nation that are killing our children, hurting women, but are not being, inspected, are not being regulated, and certainly are not being exposed for the heinous crimes and the way that women are victimized too. So that's what our organization does. We're a watchdog group, but we're also a group that is a media organization because we think the power lies in showing the truth to the public visually, messaging the truth to the public with the right, explanations of what's happening to enable the public to see the truth so that they can act on it and demand an end to, abortion, the practice of abortion in their community, public policy.
Lila, we do want to get to some of the other things in your investigations, undercover investigations, as we've been talking about in Planned Parenthood clinics. But tell our listeners and those who are watching online about this most recent number of videos that you have released, and I expect that there probably will be others to come from this investigation. Tell us what you have found in going to these abortion clinics.
Sure. Live Action's latest investigation is called Inhuman, investigating the late-term abortion industry. And it's called Inhuman because it just exposes that these practices of abortion are barbaric in nature. They're lacking compassion and human qualities. What's happening, and we've released 3 different tapes now out of New York City, out of Washington, D.C., blocks from the White House, and out of Phoenix, Arizona, of late-term abortion clinics and their abortionists telling our investigators, first of all, how they kill children as late as, 25, 26 weeks old, and then how they would even kill those same children outside of the womb if they survive an abortion. So an example, in the state of Phoenix, Arizona, our latest release, the abortionist is telling our workers, our investigators, that, her baby is maybe 24 weeks old, and they would kill the baby by inserting a needle into her abdomen, piercing the chest cavity of the little baby. This is a baby that's about a pound or two, old enough to survive outside the womb, piercing a needle into the baby's chest cavity, into the baby's heart, up to 2.5 hours of agonizing death, while the poison basically stops the baby's heart and, it leads to the death of that child. And then they will induce labor and delivery so that this woman delivers this dead baby. If the baby doesn't die because they missed the heart, they might tear that baby out piece by piece, ripping off its body parts, agonizing, torturous death to that baby. And sometimes, if they haven't killed the baby in time and they've induced labor, that baby might get delivered before they've had a chance to kill that child. And so then we've documented in the undercover tape the workers explaining how sometimes the babies do survive these brutal, grotesque attacks on them. And if they do survive, they are left to die in the clinic, which is infanticide. It's against the law. But they're left to die while they're struggling for their lives. They're not resuscitated. They're not intubated. They're left to die as little preemies in these abortion clinics.
Now, Lila, let me make clear for those who are listening, when we say an undercover investigation, either you or others who are working with you go to these clinics and pose as a girl wanting information about an abortion, right? So these are workers, abortion clinic workers, who believe they are advising a girl who is wanting an abortion. Is that how this is working?
Close. We have, in this latest investigation, our investigators were actually pregnant. There were 3 different investigators, 23 to 26 weeks pregnant, and they were seeking answers about the abortion procedure. So in that, it was very authentic. Certainly were not seeking an abortion. These were mothers who loved their children and who wanted to protect their babies, and they were very courageous to go into these late-term abortion clinics and to be, brave enough to have these conversations with the abortionist, sometimes the abortionist himself.
But the abortionists or the clinic workers believe they are talking to someone who's wanting information about the. So in other words, they're not holding anything back. They're explaining as clearly as they can what the young lady could expect if she was coming for an abortion.
Exactly. They think they're talking to potential customers who may be paying them up to $10,000 to perform these barbaric procedures on them.
I find it amazing. We're here talking with you today at this very moment. A jury in Philadelphia is in the 5th day of deliberations on one of the most horrid cases, I believe, of abortion that has been brought to the public's attention. Dr. Kermit Gosnell and another member of his clinic facing murder charges in the case scenarios much like you have described to us. Now, the mainstream media, was very slow, and that became a story in this trial, very slow to even cover this story. It must have been disturbing to you. You've been a lifelong advocate of the pro-life cause. It must have been disturbing for you for the media to be so slow about this. But at the end of the day, they are covering it now. Do you think, depending on how things go, that this trial will be a bit of a breakthrough for many Americans in seeing just the horrors that go on behind these clinic doors?
I think you're absolutely right. I think this is an amazing teaching moment for the country because we're seeing for the first time an abortionist on trial for killing children. I mean, abortionists kill children every day. They violently, tear children apart in the womb. I mean, people don't understand the brutality of the abortion procedure. If they did, they would reject it. They would not tolerate it. But because it's been so hidden from the public eye, people have, tolerated it. But, with Kermit Gosnell on trial in Philadelphia, people are learning how he killed these children, how even when they were born, screaming, crying, whimpering for their lives, he was slitting their necks and severing their spinal cords. People are just seeing some of the images of the victims of these helpless infants that he was killing. And so rightfully so, he's on trial, and we have to only pray that this jury will see justice through for Gosnell and that he will be convicted for these crimes, as he should be. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. Gosnell is not alone, and this is the wider opportunity to get more of the truth out there that this abortion industry that's been allowed in our country in the last 40 years is hurting countless children and women. And Gosnell is just he's not an outlier. He's gotten a lot of attention, but there are many other Gosnells in our country. And I think it's also a time to reevaluate why have we allowed this. So-called feminists claimed that abortion would empower women. Well, I would say I'm a feminist, a pro-life, Christian feminist who believes that women have equal dignity to men and should be treated with respect and have equal rights. But at the same time, abortion does not empower women. It goes against feminism. It goes against our dignity as women. It turns us against ourselves. No woman walks into an abortion clinic feeling powerful. She walks into an abortion clinic feeling powerless. And she feels this way because she's pressured, maybe by her boss who wouldn't promote her because she was pregnant, or by her boyfriend or another family member who's pressuring her and saying that they'll leave her or they won't support her if she has the baby. She's not doing this out of empowerment. She's doing this out of desperation and suffering. And that's the truth of abortion for women in America. And that message is finally getting out there, that we've been sold a bill of goods as women, and we need to shift the paradigm about how we think about our children and about our dignity as women, and that we don't have to kill our children as women to achieve our dreams. And no one should tell us that this choice of abortion is a choice that is going to empower us.
Lila, from a journalistic standpoint, we want to be as fair and thorough as possible. As you have begun to release these latest videos, some of the clinic workers or the abortionists have said that you're unfairly portraying what goes on in their clinics. They're saying, we would call 911 if there was a failed abortion and a baby was born alive. We might not do anything to try very hard to save them, but we would follow the law. What do you say to these kinds of responses in light of what you have found in these undercover operations?
Sure. Well, I think that we shouldn't be surprised that abortion advocates and abortionists come back and attack Live Action. We were even called, our 24-week pregnant investigator was called by that same abortionist a terrorist for what she did to expose this infanticide in his clinic. So, there are many critics because there are many people that are being exposed in these investigations, and I would just urge everyone listening to go to liveaction.org and watch the tapes, watch the full footage. We have an edited version for shorter, public viewage, just maybe 5-7 minutes, and then there's maybe 2 hours of waiting room tape, 2 hours of the actual investigation. Watch it. See how they treat these women and see what they say. And I think, in the end, you can't argue with what they say on the tapes. This is what they say when they think no one is listening, when they think no one is watching except for this, this vulnerable woman. What they say to the media, these abortionists are going to claim in the media that, we only, we would never kill an infant who survives an abortion. We follow the law to the letter of the law. So what they explain on the tapes, what they admit on the tapes, what Kermit Gosnell was doing, and he has been testified against by his own staff. What he was doing in his clinic is not what he claims he does in public. And what he's doing is he's killing children inside the womb and outside the womb.
Lila, during the recent Walk for Life in Washington, the reports that came back from there is that there were hundreds of thousands of people who showed up for that march, even once again, as the mainstream media didn't report that. But one of the other reports coming out of that event was the growing number of young people like yourself who are discovering exactly what you are saying, that this is life inside of that womb, and that as much as our society is concerned about human rights, they're asking the question, why not extend those human rights to the unborn, because it is a living, breathing human being. So do you sense out there that there is a bit of a surge in the direction of people who are now starting to believe the pro-life cause, that it is a human being from the time of conception, and that as human beings who are supposed to be concerned about the welfare of other humans, that we ought to be extending it to the unborn?
Absolutely. There are hundreds of thousands of people marching in Washington, D.C. because they understand that this country is being unfaithful to our most fundamental founding principles, which is the right to life and basic human rights. And if we do not protect our weakest members of our society, our children, what good is any other law that we may have? Laws are created to protect the weak, to protect those who can't protect themselves. That's what the whole idea of a civil government is, so that we remain civil, so that we can live, in public life and have our families and live our lives. But if we're denying and violently brutalizing our weakest children, we do not have a sound system. We cannot have peace in our country. And those people who march on D.C. every January in increasing numbers, they understand that. And my generation, I'm 24 years old, my generation understands that. This is the defining issue of our day, the greatest human rights issue of our day. If we do not protect our children, how can we expect to protect anyone else? And I think that, we're just beginning in this battle. We've seen great successes already, but live action's not going away anytime soon, and we're just beginning, because it's my belief, my firm conviction, that when people know the truth about the violence and brutality, how barbaric abortion is, and when they begin to understand that this is not empowering to women like we've been lied to for many years about, then their paradigm shifts, and they begin to think, if we can protect the environment, if we can protect, have rights even for animals, if we can care about how we're perceived and, overseas, and care about the way we treat other nations, we should care the most about how we treat our weakest children.
Lila, we have a President Barack Obama, who is a champion of abortion rights. He spoke to the Planned Parenthood just a couple of weeks ago, first sitting president